Welcome back to our last part of the weekend debate, and I think a little bit about party politics, because obviously Liv Van is here, and you're not going to tell me you're standing, I suppose, and you're not going to tell me who is standing yet, but clearly you'll be looking like everybody else to make like last time, to put up a fair few candidates, yes?
Yeah, we were intending to fight the election in September on as broad a platform as we can. We'll be announcing our candidates later this month. We're into May now, 1st of May today. So by the end of the month, our first tranche of candidates you'll know them.
Tranche?
Yeah.
Seriously, you're going to put one up in every area, right? So 12, yeah? Yeah?
We'd love to be able to do that, but realistically, no, we're not going to be able to do that. And I don't think any of the other two parties will be in a position to do that either. Yeah, perhaps collectively, we'll hope to manage that.
You're going to have a little alliance?
There's no alliance, but I'm just saying the three parties together spread around the island might be putting up candidates to stand in each area.
I mean, isn't the problem slightly that you overlap with so many things, the Greens and Labour? You all sort of say the same sort of things?
In broad terms, but we all have our differences. I think the Manx Labour Party is moving slightly further to the left than they perhaps were before themselves. Would say we're very firmly in the centre ground in liberal traditions in the UK. The Greens have their own policy agenda, which is broadly on environmental issues, but they have policies in other parts of what government does. But I think we'll come together after the election. There won't be a coming together before the election.
And they have to sign up to the Charter and have to abide by, because I'm going now because we've had people fall by the wayside each time who they get in, and then they don't want to quite keep by the same agreements.
Yeah, well, you
can't polite here. Julie H.
You can't stop people leaving a party if they choose to do so. What we're saying, we announced a declaration of principles back in January, just to let everyone know what broadly we stand for. And any candidates who's standing on a Liberal Vannin platform will be expected to agree broadly with those principles.
And those principles are made by yourselves or in a group, or does everyone just put in what they want and it's a mishmash of everyone's ideas?
They were drawn up by the Liberal Vannin executive and then put to members and broad agreement on them. We'll also be announcing some policy statements when we announce our candidates, but it won't be a full manifesto at this stage. It will be, again, giving an idea of direction that the Liberal Vannin would like to see government go in following September elections.
But someone gets in on your ticket and then decides to leave, they can, can't they?
Of course.
There's nothing to stop people, which must be frustrating.
They could leave for another party, they could leave to become independent, they could resign from Tynwald, they could become ill, like Kate did, and sadly. So there's a whole host of reasons why people might decide to leave a party. We would hope it wouldn't be on political grounds.
Right. Remind us of your day. You remember your day in skis? I've been constantly rude here. What was it? Where was the party bits there? Was it Labour? Just Labour? Was that it?
No, and Liberal Vannin.
How long?
Well, Bill Malarkey stood in 2006 under the Liberal Vannin ticket.
Yeah, it was 2004,
and then you had
2005.
Zach, and then Kate, as we were talking about those that have left. But obviously you've got Laurie in there at the moment, and I think he's a very good member as well.
But party politics in the Isle of Man, in Tynwald, in the House of Keys, what do you think?
I can see benefits that party politics would bring, but I also can see that certainly when I go canvassing, when I went canvassing last time, when I've spoken to them, throughout the 5-year term, people are often uncomfortable around party politics because they like the ability to buy into a person, but it does make things such as programme for government harder. So I certainly, can see the value, but equally I think that, having a group that can work together with a clear programme for government, because I think that is really important, can bridge that gap. So I think that, there's a balance for me, but the feeling on the doorstep was certainly not in favour of party politics.
Which makes everything, as usual, very tricky, doesn't it? Because everyone, independents have their own agenda, they stand, they get in maybe, they want a Legoland or whatever it's going to be, they have their big moment.
Nothing wrong with Legoland.
No, not at all. But, you know, I'm trying to say,
I mean...
They do like one thing, they don't get it, and they're
it's like herding cats.
But just going back to what I was touching on before about legislative council being publicly elected, if, for instance, and this is hypothetically, of course, but if a party got 3 or 4 members in and then decided, you know what, we're just going to sit on the back benches and not take part in any departments at all, if you've got members of Legco that have been publicly elected, you know, you may well need to use those as ministers. You know, there are some good people in there, you know, but at the moment, and quite rightly too probably, they haven't got that public mandate, so you wouldn't. And chief ministers have said they wouldn't use them as ministers. I think I was probably the last one.
But that's not in law, is it? That's just
yeah, it's a given. It's a given that it won't happen. I mean, I think
we voted on it in Tynwald.
Sorry?
I think we voted on it in Tynwald.
Was it actually?
I think I might have been the last one that was allowed to stay on as minister after the election while I was in education for 18 months when I went to Legco. But then after that, we said it wouldn't happen. And I totally understand that. Yeah. But if everybody's publicly elected, and I never used to accept that that was the way to go, being publicly elected. I think if keys were voted in by the public, as they are, members of the public should allow the keys to pick those 8 people, and those people come from different backgrounds. Some are keys members, some are from different backgrounds, and it's always worked in my view. But having spent 5 years in Legislative Council and had ministers, 3 senior ministers who are in there now, come in and go, your days are numbered, this is the end for Legco, and that's absolutely happened. You know, if they've got a public mandate, they can't do that anymore. They can't do that. And they can be used for any job. And I absolutely think that's probably the right way to go now.
Of course, members of Legco, if they were standing for election, could also be members of political parties.
Yes, so, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
I think there's a stronger position for political parties at the moment than there's been for a number of years. The Isle of Man Green Party, the Manx Labour Party and Liberal Vannin are making stronger ground and getting their ideas across in a more effective way than perhaps for a few years.
Would you commit to not being in any departments at all? Would you have that sort of feeling maybe that you would just be backbenchers? Would that again cause
I think that would depend on the results of the election and who was selected as Chief Minister and what the programme for government was. We wouldn't want to make a decision like that in advance of the elections. No one knows
it compromises you
until after
It does compromise you though, being on a department. You must massive conflict sometimes in health, don't you? With what you being a nurse and you know what goes on up the hospital and what you have to say or do or rubber stamp. Come on, you must be right to the edge. I think you have, haven't you? Right to the edge sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, and we have some very robust discussions in Department of Health, but that's how it needs to be. You know, there needs to be the ability to push back and scrutinise within the departments. You know, it's certainly not for me a rubber stamping exercise by any stretch of the imagination. And if there was something that happened that I was fundamentally and principled against, there's no way I'd go in and vote for it. I would resign from the department. I just don't. For me, it's a line I couldn't cross.
How close have you got to resigning on anything? Has it? Oh, it's quite clear.
We've certainly had some really challenging conversations, and we've had difficult decisions to make. So I think the two go hand in hand.
Right. And I will get back to the subject of that. I just, as a side, because of your health, Manx Care, good, bad, indifferent.
There's been some teething issues. I think some of the things that the photo was a really bad start.
You couldn't make that up,
I
could you? I mean,
but
they should have left it up though, shouldn't they? They should have left it and just stood by it rather than removing it. Again, as soon as you do that, it's
I
all
would
like
always advocate for that position. You know, if you get something wrong, leave it up and just put. If you need to put an explanation. In hindsight, that
by putting it off, it made the hairs run even more.
Yeah. But saying that, I've had some really positive feedback from Manx Care in terms of engagement with staff and really wanting to understand the issues that have been affecting morale and really wanting to make necessary changes. So I think there has been some really, really good positive work on the ground, which for me is really positive news.
So when you hear David Ashford saying X, Y, Z in the press conferences or whatever, sometimes are you biting your lip a little bit, or you smile nicely, or you're totally patting him on the back? No,
well, the interesting thing actually is that it hasn't all been, in fact, the vast majority hasn't come from DHSC. It's been through the COVID structures, which has been the Bronze, Silver, Gold Command, NSG and COMINT. It's not coming through departments in the conventional way. So where I've disagreed, I've been quite happy to tell him I disagree, because I think that's important. I think we have to have the ability to challenge. Otherwise, Parliament's just rendered impotent, in my opinion.
Do you think ministers can be MLCs? could be drawn from there, or are you very much happier that it is MHK?
I think, as Tim said, you'd have to completely restructure to get to that position. I think at the minute, while MLCs are elected by MHKs, I would be uncomfortable with having MLCs as ministers. I'm not uncomfortable actually with having MLCs in a more almost a non-executive role where there's an understanding of the legislation, but it shouldn't be about policy creation. And I suppose that's my one concern around how you go around the democratically elected route, is if you had someone who was very clearly in one policy stance as a legislative council member, you'd have to fundamentally change the structure of how legislative council works, because you couldn't say, well, you can't now have a policy position on it, because you would have been elected with a policy position and the public would have an expectation on you to deliver on your policies.
Okay,
which
so you're
then
the
makes
last one ever then, maybe?
I think, as far as I know, Paul, yeah.
Yeah. And any views on
Well, I think the Legislative Council should be reviewed, and what we expect of the Legislative Council, along with how they're elected. I think that's something that it might not be a top priority for the next government. It's something that should be
And that would
considered.
include changing the timing of the elections for the Legco if they stayed separate, and also local authority elections. I mean, it's all out of sync completely. I mean, even coming up this year now, you've got local authority elections just in July.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you do that after the general election? So if anybody wanted to stand from the local authority, stood and got in or didn't get in, they'd still need to be replaced or could stand back at the local authority election then.
Okay, and your views, and this is a real case, but I don't want to push personalities, but to someone from an MLC wanting to stand as an MHK, but if they don't get the mandate, can carry on as an MLC.
You're talking about Kate's position
I was trying not to.
in
Yes,
Keighley.
I am, but I just don't
There's
do
not
any
too many,
lecturing
is
here.
there?
I know, make it worse. Like, yes, everyone talking about Kate. What do you think to that?
I think it's a decision for Kate. There's political arguments for and against whether she should resign from Legco.
What do you think?
I don't think she should be in Legco anyway. I think she should stand as an MHK. Yeah.
But she is, but she
Yeah.
can then continue as an MLC.
Yeah.
That's my question is, is that what do you think is...
I think if I was in her position, I would stand down as from Legco.
I was fortunate. My term came up 15 months ago or so, and I just was able to stand down. I wanted to stand down. It was the easiest decision for me. I love the job, but it was just walking away from that job was so easy at the time because of my reasons, But for Kate, I just think, I wouldn't tell my sons to go and resign from their job and then go and look for another job if they weren't happy or whatever the case, or they think they can do better. I would say, you look for a job while you're still in a job. So I've got no problems with Kate. And if she knows if she doesn't get in, she's probably going to get emptied out come February. She knows that, and she would expect that, I think. But having said that, she's a very good MLC, as Claire has already said, and having worked with her, she's very methodical and very good at her job. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kate's an excellent MLC, and I think she'll be an excellent MHK if she's fortunate enough to be elected. But I agree, actually, with both previous comments. I really feel that to ask someone to walk away when you've got a family to support and to just essentially take no salary to go for something else, I have a struggle with that. And as Tim said, we wouldn't ask anyone else to do that in a job. So, while I completely understand and respect the concerns people have voiced around it, I'm not sure that there's a mechanism to make that situation easier as we stand at the minute. And we've accepted that civil servants can stand for election without resigning. There's lots of things that we've put in place to make it easier for people to stand. And actually, I think what's really brave is taking the leap from MLC to MHK. And I think she should be complimented for doing that. She's acknowledged that actually she's got something really valuable to offer as an MHK, and she's put her cards on the table. And as Tim said, ultimately she may, if she's not successful as an MHK, lose her seat almost certainly as an MLC.
And your name might be on the same ticket. Are you going to announce now today? Just do it now for us.
Announce what?
Are you standing again? Come on.
I'm thinking about it.
Okay.
When I went, I said...
So your name might be on that ticket?
It might be on that ticket, absolutely.
No? Okay, we tried our best. We were going to talk about the Western plan and everything, weren't we?
The North and the West.
North and West. Let's quickly tackle this because we got time. What are your views?
There's consultancy out at the moment for the area plan for the North and the West, which is at a preliminary stage. They've announced sites that people have identified where development may happen, and government is now to make a decision as to which ones are appropriate and which aren't, and they're looking for the public's views on that. I think the whole planning process that we have is convoluted, unnecessarily complex and cumbersome, but it is what it is. And I'm certainly encouraging everyone to have a look carefully at what's in the documents and make a response. And I've called a public meeting for the Aaron Michael constituency section of the North and West area in Selby on the 19th of May to get residents' views. I'm putting some of my own views across as part of that process.
You call that meeting, Paul. Why have you called that? Is that because government are not doing it, or haven't said they're going to do it at the moment, or...?
I've called it because I think it's
make sure it happens.
Essential.
It's absolutely essential that it happens, and government should be doing it, in my view. But if not, then somebody in the constituency should be doing it. But these are plans that, the last one for Peel was 1989, and we moan about all the houses that actually that land was zoned for housing in 89. So
I don't know what's happening in Peel on the area plan, but I know that Laurie Hooper and Alex Allenson are considering having a meeting in Ramsey to discuss the implications for Ramsey.
We now don't need as many houses as we thought we did, right? Is that what the general feeling now is?
That's part of the discussion in the documents that back in the 2011 census, there was an indication that the population would be rising and that there might be a need for more housing than has proved the case since the 2016 midway census. And we're obviously in census year again at the moment, but we won't have the results of that till next year. So the area plan's going to have to be adjusted in line with the data that comes out of this year's census.
Yeah, it's not just about the quantity of houses, it's about the value of those houses, the size of the houses, the location. There's so many other elements to it, and making sure there's houses that are accessible to allow people to buy for first-time buyers. And there is definitely a gap at the bottom of the market that I think needs reviewing. And there's opportunities within brownfield development, and I think there's been some really positive moves around that in terms of development corporations looking at how we can actually push that forward. So I think that I'm hopeful for us seeing some movement. Certainly Douglas East, I think, is an area that is full of sites that have caused huge amounts of frustration to people who are living near them and to the wider island, really, because you see certain sites across the island that are talked about again and again and again. Nothing seems to ever get over the line. But the benefit of government being involved in that is making sure that we actually get properties that are at the right end of the market to support people actually buying and getting onto the property ladder, which is so important.
There is As I say, there is a huge issue at the moment, and I know from personally, people trying to get on the property ladder and just can't. The properties are either sold before you get there, or the price is just so restrictive. And even with the lump sum they're saving, and then before they go to buy it, they've gone up again. And and in the past, the banks have cut back on or have put up the amount of deposit you had to put in, and that's all changing. But it's just people getting first-time buyers need help, and we've got to do something. We, the island, have got to do something to make sure that does happen.
Well, cutting across all this, we've got the all-island housing strategy, which the planning process doesn't seem to dovetail very easily into what else is going on in government. And it's also, as I say, it's long drawn out. We've had an island strategic plan for a few years. We had the East Area plan a few years ago now, and there's been a lot of controversy about how that's developed in terms of housing. And we're only now getting to the North and West area plan, and there are other area plans to follow afterwards. By the time all of these area plans come to fruition, the strategic plan will be nearly out of date.
Well, that's we'll talk about this in 5 years, 10 years. It's just an ongoing thing. Okay, I'm going to really wrap it here. You standing?
We'll see.
We'll see.
Didn't get anyone come out on standing, never mind. We'll get them, we'll drag it out of them, Thank you anyway for watching the show. I think we recorded it, hopefully we have. We'll see you again next week. Thank you.